Wired started as a camera test for a larger project called Two Betrayals that I'm hoping to shoot later this year. It's also become the third in what I like to call the Dripping Sink trilogy, because our last 2 years, my Rode reel submissions both started with shots of a dripping sink. I recently bought a Rode Stereo Video Mic X as a compact stereo solution to gather ambiances for documentaries and also to gather sound effects for sound design. It's a little bit unconventional, but I wanted to experiment with the Rode Stereo Video Mic X to gather the sound effects for Wired. I really like it because the mic's noise floor are much lower than the built-in mics of the Zoom H1n that I use as my portable pocket recorder that's on me most of the time. And I found it was really good for gathering quiet sound effects that normally would be too quiet and be too close to the noise floor of the Zoom H1n. One thing that I always try to keep in mind when doing sound design for a movie is that it's not necessarily about what sounds the most realistic, but it's about what sounds right. I think filmmaking in general, but sound design in particular, is a balance between realism and impressionism. It's not about depicting the scene as realistically as possible, but about conveying what it feels like to be there. When looking at sound design, I like to break the work up into several different categories. Now, keep in mind, I'm basically self-taught, so take my terminology with a grain of salt. A lot of these have precise definitions, and I might get them a little wrong. I like to sort these different categories of sound effects by color on my timeline, both because it's super satisfying and aesthetically pleasing, and also because it helps me mix and balance each of the elements as I'm putting together the sound design for a film. So the first category would be dialogue or production sound. It's the sound that you recorded on the day when you filmed. In Wired, I threw most of that out because I left my air conditioner on, and I knew I was going to go back and replace most of it. The second type of sound effect are design sound effects, or I've also heard these called hard sound effects. And these are sounds you definitely intended to replace. So for Wired, examples of this would be the gun and the transmitter beat. Both of them are made up of a couple of different sounds mixed together. Another category is Foley. I recently learned that Foley art is considered to be sound design performed in sync to the picture. Some people also use this to just mean any of the really subtle sound effects like footsteps, breathing, clothing rustle. But I actually really like that definition of it being what's performed in sync to the picture, and that is how I handled it with Wired. Then there's stingers, which are totally impressionistic sounds. They're not representing anything the characters are hearing within the world of the movie, but they're there to set the mood and the tone for the audience. It's not quite soundtrack or score, but these are more like drones or Brahms or drops that highlight specific moments. Finally, there's the music track, which is just the movie's score. So that's a look at the sound design of Wired. I hope this video was useful, and go out there and make some movies.